So obviously we all know that one of the most important things to winning our drafts is finding value. I wanted to take that idea, turn it in reverse, and look at ADP values that I think are just absolutely horrible and give you a top 5 guys that I just think that their ADP doesn't make any sense and that they're being overvalued, so you are losing some actual value in your draft. Stick around for the very last one, because the very last one will tilt a bunch of people, which is why I put it at the end, because if I did it the other way, people would be like, yeah, I gotta get out of here, bro. So the first on the list for me is going to be Travis Hunter for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's going around wide receiver 30 in consensus ADP. Again, these are not rankings. This is actually where he's being drafted. So my biggest issue with this is number one, and I know this is very contrarian, and that's fine. I'm not saying he's going to be a bust in the NFL. What I am going to say is reviewing his tape as a wide receiver, which is what you're drafting him for, unless you have IDPs. So if that's what your situation is, then, do whatever you want, because I don't really have as much feel for him as a corner. But as a wide receiver, I wasn't as impressed with his tape. Now, the biggest thing people will tell you, and the thing you'll see out there on social media is, well, Travis Hunter, he didn't actually work with the receivers, the receiver coaches, so he was just out there running the best routes he could and doing the best that he could. And that's fine, and you can say that, and I can buy that. The biggest issue, though, is that Travis Hunter isn't going to be the wide receiver one on this team. It's going to be Brian Thomas Jr., hands down, no questions. I feel like for 98% of people out there. The issue is he's going before a lot of other good wide receiver ones. I can't say great, I almost did, but good wide receiver ones and some good wide receiver twos. And I just don't think his ADP actually makes sense. The guys that he's going before is Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, Chris Olave, who are all wide receiver ones for their football teams. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to be high scoring, but are the Jags going to be a top 10 scoring offense? Probably not. You have him before Jalen Waddle, Jordan Addison, two guys who we've seen have good seasons in the NFL. He's going before Chris Godwin, who's another wide receiver two, who's had good seasons as well. Then he goes before like Roma Dunze, who, again, for some people out there, he's like a big breakout candidate this year. I'm kind of in between on him, but still he's before him. Debo, Cooper Kupp, not as upset with, because I would take him over Debo and Cooper Kupp just because I think that they're older and kind of washed. But he's also going before Stephon Diggs, Jacoby Myers, Khalil Shakir, Juwan Jennings, and Matthew Golden, who all respectively are going to more than likely be the wide receiver ones on their football team this coming season. So you're just taking him before 7 wide receiver ones and a good chunk of good wide receiver twos. I just don't see that making any sense. I understand there's so much hype around these rookie players. We're expecting them to break out, be amazing, and I completely get that. But we do the same thing every year. We don't temper our expectations, and we push players up that are going in as rookies a lot higher than they should be going. For the wide receiver ones, their yards should dramatically be more than Travis Hunter, because again, we're not expecting Trevor Lawrence and Liam Cohen to lead the league in passing and be a top 5, top 10 scoring or yards per game offense. All of those other guys necessarily aren't going to be on top 10 either, but they are the number one option on their team, where he is behind Brian Thomas Jr. So for the next person, it is going to be none other than Patrick Mahomes from the Kansas City Chiefs. The biggest issue I have, again, is Patrick Mahomes in the last 2 seasons has realistically underperformed in fantasy football. Now, that doesn't change the fact that he's a fantastic and amazing quarterback in the NFL. What that means is that his name value, and because he's so dominant in the real NFL, he's won so many Super Bowls, he is being pushed up in fantasy drafts for the past 3 seasons. The reality is that the Kansas City Chiefs have changed their scheme, and they're not doing the same things that they were doing when they had Tyreek Hill on this team. They're wanting to play more defense, they're wanting to run the ball more, and they're not asking Patrick to run the ball as much. Realistically, what's happening is they're trying to keep the games close, keep it low scoring, have their defense try and dominate as many games as they can, and keep it a close game so that in the fourth quarter, Andy Reid can say, okay, Patrick, go be Patrick Mahomes, go out there, get us ahead, get us a touchdown, get us a lead, whatever it is, or just keep adding to the lead and close out this game. It's the exact opposite of what happens in the playoffs. In the playoffs, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, he's out there running around, slinging the ball, trying to make sure that they are beating the crap out of everybody to make sure that they can win those playoff games and win the Super Bowls that they play in. Obviously, it's very different from a handful of years ago when Tyreek Hill was on this team and he's throwing the ball deep down the field. Tyreek Hill was in his prime and the defense wasn't that great, so they needed to score a lot of points. It was a different mindset and a different scheme that they were running with Andy Reid then. I think people are just really slow to accept the fact that the new system the Kansas City Chiefs are wanting to do is not wanting to score a lot of points. They want to play good defense. They want to run the ball. Doesn't mean that he won't be a QB1 in fantasy football every single year, but he does not deserve to go as QB5 or QB6, depending on where you're drafting. Okay, for my next player, it is going to be a blind reveal because I know talking about this guy, people cannot take the name value and just get out of the way. They can't look subjectively or objectively. They have to be in it for some reason. So I'm going to give you the blind reveal of these two wide receivers, and you can tell me if there's a huge difference in your mind between these two guys. So the first wide receiver in his rookie season, he averaged 11.6 fantasy points per game. He had 62 receptions, 885 yards, 8 touchdowns, and he averaged 7.6 yards per target. For the second wide receiver in his rookie season, he averaged 12.9 fantasy points per game. He had 77 receptions for 858 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he averaged 7.9 yards per target. They sound pretty equivalent, don't they? Now, what if I told you this coming season that the disparity between where they're actually being drafted is a lot bigger than you think? So wide receiver 2 is being drafted as wide receiver 27, and you have the first wide receiver being drafted as wide receiver 17. So you actually have almost an entire group of wide receivers going in between these two players, even though both of them in their rookie seasons did about the exact same thing. So who are these wide receivers? Well, the second wide receiver is Zay Flowers. Now, the biggest thing for Zay Flowers is that in year 2, there was a step up in production, but it wasn't as crazy as we thought it was going to be. He went from 12.9 fantasy points per game to 12.3. As far as his receptions, they were slightly lower, but his yards did go up. He went from 858 to 1,059. There wasn't quite as great of a jump, but then again, it's not that surprising that it wasn't that high of a jump considering that he didn't do as well as people probably thought he was going to do in his rookie season with the Baltimore Ravens. So who is the first wide receiver? It is none other than Marvin Harrison Jr. from the Arizona Cardinals. So if we think about it just like this, Lamar Jackson, running quarterback. Kyler Murray, running quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson is just a more better, well-rounded quarterback between him and Kyler Murray. The other big thing, too, is that Zay Flowers was the wide receiver 1 on his team in 2024. We're expecting Marvin Harrison to be the wide receiver 1, obviously, on his team in 2025. The bigger difference, though, is that Trey McBride, I anticipate, will outpace him in targets and receptions. We're comping him to Zay Flowers' rookie production levels. We should not be expecting him to be a fringe wide receiver 1 or a very high-end wide receiver 2, and he's just not being factored in. It's not being priced in correctly, and people again are going to overdraft Marvin Harrison Jr., and people are going to keep saying, why does this keep happening to me? And I'm telling you, a big portion of it is because you're not looking at the values like this, you're not comping it like this, and you're not watching enough of my content. So for my fourth player, it's going to be none other than JSN from the Seattle Seahawks. He's going as a fringe wide receiver 1, early wide receiver 2, very, very early, the very first one, obviously. So my issues being, and I have a long list, but I'm going to try and make it real quick because it'll be here all day. Okay, number 1, new offensive coordinator coming in. You are going to see a focus, and that is why they fired their previous OC in Seattle. There is going to be a bigger focus on this run game. Kenneth Walker is pretty good. Zach Charbonnet is pretty good. You have a two-headed monster in that backfield who are going to be able to carry a lot more of the workload this coming season, and there will be a bigger focus on them this coming season and running the football. The other big thing for Seattle, they poured a ton of resources last year during the season, after the season, in the draft, in free agency, on their defense. So what does that mean that they probably want to do? Play better defense and run the football. Because why would you be putting that much into your defense? And why do you have 2 great running backs in your backfield if that's not what you want to do? And why did you bring in the new OC who's already said he's going to run the ball more in 2025? Well, 1 + 1 is 2, so I'm going to trust they're going to run the ball more, play better defense. Okay, my other big issue, and I don't think people are thinking about this. Sam Darnold, no hate. Hope he does fantastic. I hope I'm wrong actually about this one because it means Sam Darnold played well. But my biggest issue when it comes to the actual quarterback situation is this offensive line for Seattle is going to be bottom 10 again in 2025. They did not address it enough. It was bottom 10 last year. Geno Smith was dying and still found a way to sling the ball all over the place and played up to a much higher level than people actually give him credit for, considering the offensive line situation. The biggest thing last year we saw with Sam Darnold and the Vikings is that when he was under pressure towards the end of the season, he did not perform very well. He was turning the ball over like he was back with the New York Jets, and he was a rookie. It was not good, and it was not enjoyable to watch. And then there's going to be such a big focus on the running portion for this team that JSN, in my opinion, is going to fade into some type of obscurity. He'll probably finish as a low-end wide receiver 2 by the end of the season. People are not thinking about the situation in Seattle. They're just seeing, oh, he broke out last year, so he's going to keep doing that. I'm telling you, JSN is someone who's being overvalued, and you are losing out on value and the opportunity to take somebody else and potentially win your championship by drafting JSN. So for my fifth and final person, it is the person who's going as high as humanly possible, basically, in your drafts. It is none other than Ashton Jeanty. He's going in the first round, sometimes in the middle of the first round. Sometimes he's going as running back 3, 4, 5, or 6. It really just depends, but I think on average he's going around 4 or 5. Now, I've made a whole video about Ashton Jeanty and the situation with the Raiders. I'm not overreacting from the preseason game because I've already talked about this probably about a month ago. So if that's what you think I'm doing, you're absolutely wrong. Preseason game, I don't even care. I already talked about it, but here we go again to recap if you didn't watch that video. For Ashton Jeanty, he is in a spot where he is not going to be a bad running back in real NFL football. He is not going to have a horrible career. I don't think he's going to be a bust, but he is being overvalued in your fantasy football drafts, and he will probably end up being someone that you regret picking, just like people did last year with Marvin Harrison Jr. There's only been 3 running backs who have been drafted in the first round in the last however many years it was. Like I said, I don't have my notes in front of me, who have finished as top 6 running backs in fantasy football in their rookie season. And these are the 3. Zeke Elliott behind a top 5 offensive line. And I'm going to kind of like tie some stuff in here together as well as we go. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit, so just track with me. Zeke had a top 5 offensive line that year as he finished as I think it was the RB1 overall in fantasy football. Ashton Jeanty has a bottom 10 offensive line with the Raiders. The next person was Najee Harris. He had a crazy amount of touches, and that is why he finishes a top 6 option. The biggest issue is I don't know if we're going to see quite as many touches because they're also going to have to pass the ball a lot more than people think, which means Jeanty can't run the ball as much because their defense is going to be more of a league average to bottom 10 defense in the NFL. The last person was Saquon Barkley. And Saquon Barkley was just a monster, a beast, and he was just the man of men among all running backs in his first year as a rookie. I don't think we're going to comp Ashton Jeanty to Saquon Barkley, even though some people are out there. I'm not going to do that. Again, Ashton Jeanty, based on all the running backs drafted in the first round, he has about a 14% chance to finish as an RB6 or higher. So if you are taking him around RB6 or higher, you're absolutely going to get smashed by the situation, whether that's how much they're going to pass the ball, how bad that defense is, how bad that defensive line is. I do not think Ashton Jeanty himself is a bust. I think in a couple of years, if you have him in Dynasty, he's going to be an absolute smash pick for you. Could be as soon as 2026, but in 2025, he's being overvalued in your drafts, and you are going to rue the day that you took him as RB4 or 5 or 6. If he was going as RB9, 10, or 11, there's a much bigger chance, closer to like 40, 60, 50, 50, I can't remember exactly, for him to pay off as a top 10 running back. But that high where he's going right now, it's probably not going to happen. Alrighty, so there are my 5 players at various positions who I believe are just being overvalued at their current ADP. I don't see a way for them to finish and pay off where they're being drafted. Again, like I said earlier, the way to win in fantasy football that all of you should already know by now is finding value in our drafts, and these are just 5 guys that I cannot find it for or in, or however you want to put it. If you are looking for other late round league winners, late round sleepers, whatever, who I think actually have potential to overperform their ADP, I'll have a video around here somewhere. Hopefully this video helps you get just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. And hopefully I'll see you guys. No, hopefully you guys will actually see me again real soon. Until then, y'all have a blessed day.